Liu Fang looked coldly at the old man and the young woman, whatever their relationship might be. Somewhat impatient, he said, "I have no interest in arguing with her. She's a foolish woman, and I don't have that kind of spare patience." At those words, the female assassin called Yinger suddenly raised her head. In the pair of bright eyes exposed outside her black clothing, anger blazed fiercely. She glared at Liu Fang and shifted her feet slightly, as if preparing to throw herself at him again. Seeing this, Hua An hurriedly grabbed her sleeve and shouted angrily, "Enough nonsense, get back." When he saw that the girl still stood there stubbornly, his voice grew even harsher. "Hua Ying-er, I command you in my capacity as an elder, return to your position immediately." Yinger's body trembled. A trace of dimness flickered through her bright eyes before they became empty and hollow. A dry, choked voice came from beneath her veil. "Yes, elder." The voice was unpleasant and grating. Clearly, this female assassin had used some secret technique to alter her voice. And changing one's voice was one of the basic lessons every thief had to master. Her black clothes shifted slightly, and her body turned into a streak of darkness, shooting straight toward a shadowy corner before slowly disappearing. Liu Fang sneered inwardly. How could he not understand the old man's little calculation? An 8th-rank assassin who revealed herself openly was no match for a warrior of the same level. But an 8th-rank assassin hidden in the shadows, one even ordinary star-level experts could not afford to ignore. Yet the old man seemed to have forgotten one thing. Liu Fang had just dragged Yinger out of hiding by force moments ago. Lowering his eyelids slightly, Liu Fang asked softly, "Manager Hua An, have you thought it through? Are you going to tell us what exactly you're transporting or not?" Hua An clenched his fists and remained silent. "Then I'll take my leave." Liu Fang raised an eyebrow and spoke coldly as he turned to leave. Bloodwolf and the other 3 followed right behind him. When they passed one corner of the tent, Liu Fang's right hand suddenly shot out like lightning, directly grabbing a dark figure out of a mass of shadow and hurling it behind him. "This is the 2nd time. I do not wish for there to be a 3rd. If there is, I will not show mercy again." Yinger lay sprawled on the ground, her eyes full of despair. The stealth technique she had always been so proud of had proven so worthless, so utterly useless in the eyes of this young man, not much older than herself. Beneath the black veil, her teeth bit hard into her lip as she stared in fierce unwillingness at that thin figure. Liu Fang and the others continued walking slowly. Hua An remained silent, but his hands kept tightening and loosening, revealing the turmoil in his heart. Inside the tent, the atmosphere was strange. Heavy. ... Just as Liu Fang was about to lift the curtain flap, a weary old voice finally came from behind him. "Lord Liu Fang, please wait. I'll tell you." Liu Fang quietly let out a breath of relief. He slowly turned back to look at Hua An, who was walking toward him, step by step. From the corner of his eye, he saw that the tense expressions on Bloodwolf and the other 3 had also eased slightly. As for Yinger, her body gave a faint flicker and vanished once more. Liu Fang's spiritual sense clearly told him where she was. She had hidden in a perfect patch of darkness not far from Hua An's side. The distance was neither too near nor too far, close enough to strike at any time and provide flawless protection for Hua An. Liu Fang felt a flicker of surprise. He hadn't expected that this foolish woman's skill at protecting others was far better than her apparent stealth. In truth, that judgment was rather unfair to Yinger. The truly terrifying thing about thieves was their ability to hide themselves, and Yinger had already brought that skill to an exceptional level. It was only because Liu Fang's spirit sense automatically scanned everything around him that stealth was useless against him. Within his spiritual perception, a thief's stealth technique was no different than a bright lantern in the dark. That is why he could so easily drag Yinger out of hiding with perfect accuracy. ... Hua An walked slowly ahead, his steps heavy and difficult. Liu Fang and the others followed closely. Liu Fang himself was also deeply curious about the mysterious cargo. What exactly was it? What kind of thing could make countless blood wolves travel all the way from the center of the Beastmen Prairie to its borderlands just to block them? Passing several tents, they finally saw one carriage, sealed so tightly that not even the smallest gap could be seen. As they drew closer, Liu Feng's frowned and sent out a strand of spiritual sense, trying to penetrate the carriage. But to his surprise, his divine sense, always infallible before, was blocked outside by the strange carriage. A shock rose in his heart. Hua An stepped forward and gently stroked the carriage, as he explained in a low voice. The outer frame of this carriage is forged from extremely precious star silver. It can block the probing senses of some powerful people or magical beasts. Star silver was an exceptionally rare and precious magical metal. Its value was comparable to mithril. It's beloved by magicians. Even adding the slightest amount of it when forging a staff or magical armor can grant it special mana-absorbing properties. The four men all changed expressions in shock. To use such precious and scarce star silver merely to build a cage, that was absurdly extravagant. Perhaps sensing what they were thinking, Hua An gave a bitter smile. When you see what's inside, you'll understand what is truly more precious. The four of them exchanged astonished glances. Hua An said no more. Slowly he took out an extremely strange key from his spatial ring and inserted it into the large lock. This lock was specially made for us from the vice president of the Thieves' Guild. It can only be opened with this key. Of course, it could also be broken open with overwhelming brute force, but that would require at least several star-level experts working together. The strange key slid into the lock and released a faint creaking sound. A small glow gradually appeared, but when it touched the key, it quietly faded away. The key turned lightly. The lock snapped open. The door of the carriage shook once, swayed, and slowly opened. Hua An stepped inside first. Liu Feng and the others followed. Inside the carriage, the space was broad and spacious. Even with several people entering, it did not feel crowded at all. Magical lamps emitted a bright but gentle radiance. Then Liu Feng and the others froze. At the very center stood a small cage. Inside it, a little silver wolf lay weakly on a warm cushion. This is the thing we've been transporting? Liu Feng found it hard to believe. Hua An smiled faintly. Then he began to laugh. Then laughed wildly. Do you think this is just an ordinary wolf? Liu Feng and the others remained silent. A wolf cub that could make the savage blood wolves care this much, how could it possibly be ordinary? A thought suddenly flashed through Liu Feng's mind. A terrifying possibility burst forth. He cried out in shock. This is the Moon Wolf King?
This is the Moon Wolf King.
For a moment, the space inside the carriage seemed to freeze. Bloodwolf and the other two stood there dumbfounded, mouths hanging open, eyes fixed on the little wolf inside the cage. In one of the darker corners of the carriage, something trembled ever so slightly. The Moon Wolf King, the legendary Moon Wolf King. And now it was right before their eyes. Moreover, this seemed to be a newborn moon wolf cub. Yes, a cub. Outside, the wolves had come to retrieve their king. The savage blood wolves must have sensed the faint aura leaking from the Moon Wolf King and had traveled thousands of miles to rescue it. Everything suddenly clicked into place in Liu Feng's mind. The entire chain of events became crystal clear. Damn it, we were played like fools and turned into cheap scapegoats. Realizing the truth, Liu Feng exploded with rage. He strode forward, grabbed the somewhat crazed Hua An by the collar, and kicked him violently in the stomach. Hua An was sent flying backward by the force and slid down along the corner of the carriage before collapsing onto the floor. Blood sprayed from his mouth. At the same moment Liu Feng kicked Hua An away, his right leg shot backward like lightning, striking a curtain behind him. A black shadow flew out and slammed heavily into the wall of the carriage. The shadow was none other than Ying'er, who had tried to assassinate Liu Feng after seeing Hua An attacked. She coughed up a small mouthful of blood, staining part of her black veil. Her large eyes stared stubbornly at Liu Feng as he approached, his killing intent growing thicker with every step. I seem to remember. I told you there wouldn't be a third time. Liu Feng crouched down before her, his voice turning colder and colder. Ying'er said nothing. Her stubborn gaze remained unchanged. A strand of true qi quietly gathered between Liu Feng's fingers, as if he truly intended to kill the woman before him. Feeling the faint but endless killing intent coming from his fingertips, Ying'er still did not flinch. Her veil shifted slightly as her dry, unpleasant voice sounded again. I will defeat you someday. Use your real voice, Liu Feng interrupted coldly. I hate that fake one. Ying-er wisened up. Of course, she only thought it in her heart. She wasn't stupid enough to say it out loud. I will defeat you, she repeated. This time her voice was clearer, cold and unexpectedly pleasant. Liu Feng raised an eyebrow. Lowering his head, he leaned closer. Their breaths nearly touched. Ying-er panicked slightly and shrank back. What are you doing? Seeing her reaction, Liu Feng snorted disdainfully. I just want to see how ugly the face under that veil is. Ugly enough that you dare not show it. His right hand reached out, trying to pull away the thin black veil. Ah! At last, true panic appeared in Ying-er's stubborn eyes. She cried out and pressed her body tightly against the carriage wall, clutching the veil with both hands. Seeing this, Liu Feng curled his lips into a faint smile, but his voice suddenly turned icy. However, he was no longer speaking to the girl. He was speaking to Hua An in the corner. Have you finished pretending? I know exactly how hard I kicked you. At most, you spat out a little extra blood. Liu Feng's cold voice snapped the three commanders back to their senses. They were leaders of high-ranking mercenary groups. After a brief moment of thought, they immediately understood everything. Bloodwolf inhaled sharply, fists clenched tight, clearly restraining immense anger. Zetu's face remained expressionless, but his eyes burned with fury. Balgong tried to calm himself by taking a deep breath, but failed. Damn it! I can't take it anymore! With a roar, Balgong rushed forward, his iron fist tearing through the air as it smashed toward Hua An. Balgong lacked Liu Feng's control over force. If that punch landed, Hua An would die without question. Ying-er, forgetting Liu Feng completely, screamed in terror. No! The wind from Balgong's fist roared, and but just when tragedy seemed inevitable, Balgong twisted his punch at the last moment. His fist slammed violently into the carriage wall beside Hua An. The entire carriage shook violently before settling in. Balgong panted heavily, glaring fiercely at Hua An. Don't think I wouldn't kill you! Your Huajin merchant geik is powerful, but I've crawled out of piles of corpses. Meanwhile, Ying-er let out a deep breath of relief. Her body shifted and she activated Thief Stealth, trying to hide in another corner. But Liu Feng's lips curved slightly. His hand suddenly shot out and grabbed the air. A small piece of black cloth appeared out of nowhere and fluttered to the ground. A soft gasp followed. Your veil was dirty, Liu Feng said calmly, so I helped you remove it. Back at home, Liu Feng walked over to Balgong and pulled him back. Then he turned toward Hua An and sneered. Still not getting up? If you truly don't want to get up, I can help you. Permanently. His tone was full of murderous intent. Clearly his opinion of this old cunning man had reached rock bottom. Hua An's body trembled slightly. After a moment, he slowly climbed to his feet. His old face was filled with defeat. Now that you know what we're transporting, will you still continue the mission? Bloodwolf laughed coldly. Old man, are you senile? Do you even know what that thing is? That's the Moon Wolf King, not some ordinary wolf cub. Right now, only the savage blood wolves have arrived. The Moon Wolf King's royal guards, the blood silver wolves, haven't even appeared yet. Continue the mission? You want us to die? At that moment, oh! A thunderous wolf howl suddenly echoed outside the carriage. This howl was completely different from the savage blood wolves' cries earlier. It carried an unmistakable pride. The blood silver wolves have arrived, someone murmured softly. What appeared before everyone's eyes was no longer just an endless sea of red wolves. Mixed among the crimson tide were massive wolves with silver streaks in their fur. They covered the ground. The other wolf packs had stopped attacking. They approached the blood silver wolves with reverence. Then they raised their heads and howled. The sound of wolves filled the sky. 10,000 wolves running, all beasts retreating. Any magical beast that heard the howl immediately fled, running as far away from the wolf pack as possible. Over 10,000 sixth-rank blood silver wolves, hundreds of thousands of savage blood wolves, a force capable of easily destroying an entire empire. Such an enormous army gathered silently across the plains. Liu Feng's face looked somewhat pale, and the three commanders didn't look much better. But honestly, anyone who saw giant wolves covering the ground like this would hardly be in a good mood. Commanders, Liu Feng said calmly, go gather all the mercenaries from the other positions. Bring them here and keep everyone together. That way we might hold out a little longer. From what I see, they plan to attack us head-on. The three commanders nodded helplessly. That's the only choice. The wolves' momentum was overwhelming. They kept releasing waves of howls toward the camp. Even the full moon seemed influenced by them, its silver light suddenly growing brighter. Right now, every warrior in the camp is gathered here. Bloodwolf pointed toward the shouting mercenaries nearby and smiled bitterly. Liu Feng nodded gloomily. Then he turned to look at the wolves, some sitting, some standing, some howling, and fell into thought. They seemed to be waiting for something. Bloodwolf and the others trembled slightly. That can't be. Even the blood silver wolves have arrived. Who else could they be waiting for? A brief silence fell. Bogon suddenly whispered, "Could it be another Moon Wolf King?" His quiet voice sounded like thunder. The small space instantly felt frozen. Liu Feng was the first to break the silence. He chuckled lightly. "Don't be so pessimistic." Seeing the three still looking discouraged, he became slightly annoyed. "Do you really need to be this afraid? Haven't you crawled out of piles of corpses before? You're the backbone of your mercenary groups. If you lose your nerve, who's going to kill wolves?" His words gradually straightened their backs. When he finished, the three commanders' faces were slightly red with embarrassment. They smiled awkwardly, but the fear in their hearts had faded. "You're right," Bloodwolf laughed loudly. "Damn it, we've crawled out of death who knows how many times. Why run now?" He slapped Liu Feng's heavily on the shoulder. Feeling the force of the poem, Liu Feng rolled his eyes. "Revenge," he thought gloomily. "That's blatant revenge." Liu Feng smiled faintly. "Relax. Even if the Moon Wolf King really appears, I can still get you all out alive." His voice was calm, but hidden in that calm tone was unquestionable confidence. Bloodwolf and the others exchanged glances. They truly didn't know where this young man's confidence came from. To rescue people from the jaws of hundreds of thousands of savage blood wolves, tens of thousands of blood silver wolves, and a terrifying Moon Wolf King? What kind of power would that require? Saint rank. That's the only answer. But in the entire human world, there were only 4 Saint rank experts. Each one held a terrifyingly high status. Would such figures come rescue a few mercenary groups? Impossible. So the three simply laughed it off. They didn't take Liu Feng's words seriously. Liu Feng saw their expressions and naturally understood their thoughts. He only smiled slightly and did not explain. If things truly reached that point, even if it caused trouble later, he would have no choice but to let Little Gold take action. Thinking of that, Liu Feng gently touched his stomach. Inside it rested something incredibly terrifying, a Huaxia divine dragon. "Hey, Xiaofeng, looks like we're in big trouble this time." A loud voice came from behind him. Liu Feng's forehead instantly filled with black lines. Without turning around, he already knew who it was. Who else but that muddle-headed dwarf would say something like that at this time? Taking a deep breath to suppress his irritation, Liu Feng suddenly admired his mercenary captain. How had he survived this long while enduring that dwarf's nonsense? Turning around, Liu Feng gritted his teeth. "Shorty, wasn't this mission accepted by you?" Badassi's cheerful face froze. Yeah. He scratched his head awkwardly and quickly shrank back. Heiran walked forward with a gentle smile. Looking at the countless wolves in the distance, he asked, worriedly, "Xiaofeng, can we really handle this?" Liu Feng shrugged. "I don't know. Let's wait and see. But you'll all survive." The previously calm wolf pack suddenly became restless. A thunderous howl echoed from far away. Wherever the howl reached, the wolves lowered their heads and whimpered in submission. Even the proud blood silver wolves bent their forelegs slightly, not daring to challenge it. As the howl approached, everyone finally saw it clearly. A 3-meter-tall, moon-colored giant wolf flashed across the prairie, rapidly approaching. So it really is the Moon Wolf King. What incredible speed! Liu Feng sighed in amazement. Everyone's expressions had been grim after the Moon Wolf King appeared. The Moon Wolf King stepped gracefully to the front of the pack. Wherever she passed, the wolves moved aside, giving their king the utmost respect. The Moon Wolf King then turned her gaze towards the humans in the camp and opened her massive mouth. "Humans, return the little moon wolf, and I will allow you to leave. Otherwise..." Cold human words echoed through the camp. Everyone froze. The fact that the Moon Wolf King could speak human language shocked them, but what shocked them even more was the voice. It sounded like the sweet, slightly spoiled voice of a young girl. Realizing what they were thinking, the mercenaries quickly shook their heads violently. What nonsense is this? How can a wolf's voice sound so pleasant? Liu Feng was briefly surprised, but quickly recovered. He had seen magical beasts that spoke human language before. In the Death Forest, many super beasts could do so, and Kuta could even transform into human form. He turned his head. The three commanders were clearly signaling him to step forward and speak. Liu Feng rolled his eyes internally. These burly men were shamelessly pushing him out. With a light leap, he floated outside the camp. He cupped his fist politely and cleared his throat. Miss Moon Wolf King? He hesitated awkwardly, unsure how to address her. May I ask, how exactly have we mercenaries offended you to require such a massive mobilization? The Moon Wolf King looked at him carefully. Human, you are very strong, but if you do not return the little moon wolf, you will never leave the prairie. Liu Feng smiled bitterly. The conversation had barely begun and it had already reached a dead end. Suddenly, the Moon Wolf King moved. A brilliant light burst from her body. Her enormous wolf form rapidly shrank within the glow. A small silhouette gradually appeared. When the light faded, a woman stood there. She stretched lazily. Her graceful figure appeared faintly within the fading light. A charming and languid voice sounded. It's been many years since I've used a human body. Across the prairie, even the wind seemed to pause, as if stunned by the beauty of this enchanting woman. Liu Feng took a deep breath, suppressing the amazement rising from the depths of his heart and forcing his expression to remain calm. Behind him came the collective sound of jaws dropping. Liu Feng could only shake his head with a bitter smile. But this could hardly be blamed on them. The woman before them, or rather, the wolf woman, was simply too enchanting. When wild ferocity blended perfectly with noble elegance, she possessed a beauty capable of driving the world into madness. Her long, slender legs carried an explosive wildness. Her silver hair shimmered beneath the moonlight. A moon-white wolf fur robe draped gently over her body, barely concealing the delicate curves beneath. Her exquisitely perfect face radiated both natural charm and regal dignity. Her rosy lips curved into a proud smile that seemed to look down on all living beings. Humans, you always care so much about appearances. The Moon Wolf King smiled beautifully, her jade-like fingers brushing lightly across her flawless cheek. For a moment, even the dazzling moonlight seemed dim beside her smile. Liu Feng's heart trembled violently. His pulse began racing uncontrollably. He bit down hard on his tongue. The sharp pain drove away the distracting thoughts. With a bitter smile, he realized that speaking with her in such a state would leave him so enchanted he might not even remember his own name. His eyelids slowly closed. His mind sank into stillness. Then they opened again. His heart became cold as ice. All things were like grass beneath his feet. The confusion in his eyes disappeared, replaced by chilling calm. Liu Feng said coldly, Miss Moonwolf, we do not know what you were talking about. Please allow us to leave. The Moonwolf King was slightly startled. A hint of amusement appeared on her stunning face. She had not expected this young man to break free of her charms so easily. Even many star rank experts could not manage that. Covering her lips with a delicate hand, she laughed softly. Little human, there's no need to try to fool me. The wolf race has its own ways of tracking. According to my senses, the next Moonwolf King is right there. Her slender finger pointed directly at the tightly sealed carriage inside the camp. Liu Feng's heart jumped. Damn it, just as I thought. The Moonwolf King smiled sweetly and began walking forward. As she moved, the moon-white wolf fur robe revealed glimpses of bare skin. A large expanse of snow-white flesh appeared. Clearly, the robe was the only thing she wore. Beneath it, there was nothing. Inside the camp, several mercenaries nearly sprayed blood. Bloodwolf and Baogang awkwardly rubbed their noses. Zitu wisely turned his gaze up toward the moon. As for Liu Feng, his current mental state simply filtered the scene automatically. As the Moon Wolf King approached, Liu Feng began slowly stepping backwards, because in his mind, this woman was extremely dangerous. But as long as he maintained a distance of 10 steps, he was confident he could handle anything she attempted. Distance, it had to be maintained. The farther, the better. Seeing him retreat, the Moon Wolf King frowned slightly. Are you afraid of me? Liu Feng nodded honestly. Yes, because if you take one more step forward, we will have to fight. The Moon Wolf King froze for a moment. She had not expected her intentions to be seen through so easily. She shot Liu Feng an annoyed glare, her slender arm lifted higher, pointing toward the carriage again. Will you return the Moon Wolf cub? If you do, I will allow you to leave. I will even forgive your crime of stealing one of my people, that you must hand over the thief. If you refuse, then we fight, and the hundreds of thousands of wolves behind me will ensure your destruction. Liu Feng fell silent. The camp fell silent. The wolf pack following their king also remained silent. After a long while, Liu Feng sighed. This is not my decision alone, but I have a suggestion. Would you hear it? The Moonwolf King's face grew cold. I don't care about your suggestions. The Moonwolf cub must be returned. Otherwise, I do not mind leading the wolf race in an assault on the human kingdoms. Seeing his goodwill rejected, Lu Feng felt irritation rise. He sneered. You think I'm a fool? If you lead the wolves out of the prairie, the Saint rank experts will act personally. They could wipe out the entire wolf race. The Moonwolf King laughed softly. And who says the wolf race does not have Saint rank experts? We have lived on the Beastmen Prairie for thousands, tens of thousands of years. Do you think that is simply luck? Lu Feng was stunned. Then realization dawned. Creatures like the savage blood wolves were disasters. Powerful experts would surely want to eliminate them. Yet the wolves existed, which means they had something even Saint rank experts feared. And what could make Saint rank experts cautious? Only other saint beings. Little human. The Moonwolf King laughed. This continent is far more complicated than you imagine. Lu Feng's face grew slightly warm at being mocked so easily. After a moment, he calmed. Well, we also possess something you fear. Lu Feng smiled lightly. You want the Moonwolf cub alive, not dead. Yes, threatening you with a cub is a rather despicable method, but for the sake of my companions, I have no choice. You may be able to kill us all, but I can guarantee that when you finally retrieve the Moonwolf cub, it will be already dead. The Moonwolf King's smile turned colder and colder. By the time Lu Feng finished speaking, her expression looked as if it could freeze solid. Humans truly are despicable. No matter how time changes, your shamelessness never does. Lu Feng could only accept the insult. Well then, state your suggestion. I will consider it, but do not challenge my bottom line. That would not benefit you. The Moonwolf King was furious. Her full chest rose and fell sharply, but for the safety of the Moonwolf cub, she forced herself to compromise. Lu Feng spoke carefully. Let us leave the Beastmen Prairie first. When we reach the border, we will return the Moonwolf cub. The Moonwolf King immediately rejected it. You take us for fools? The shamelessness of humans is famous across the world. Do you expect me to trust you? Dream on. Can't you come up with a suggestion that has even a little value? Lu Feng snapped irritably. That doesn't work. This doesn't work. Then what exactly do you want? Return the Moonwolf cub and the thief who stole it. I will allow you to leave. Impossible. We cannot hand over the thief, and the cub will only be returned after we leave the prairie. Above everyone, one side, and below everyone, one married man who had no status whatsoever. On the other, neither would give. Both sides held firm. Neither was willing to yield. Both had their own fears. Neither dared break the negotiation completely. After arguing for some time, both Lu Feng and the Moonwolf King felt their throats growing dry. Suddenly, the Moonwolf King stomped her foot. Can't you compromise even one step? Lu Feng sighed with helplessness. Big sister, this isn't a game. One step back means countless people die. The Moonwolf King's eyes suddenly lit up. A playful smile appeared on her face. I have an idea. Let's have a contest. The winner decides everything. Lu Feng felt tired of the endless argument. Hearing this, however, he felt tempted. But such a decision could not be made alone. He had to consult his companions. Let me go back to the camp and discuss it with them first. The Moonwolf King frowned impatiently and waved her hand. Go, go. You're a grown man, yet less decisive than a woman. I hate men like that. So that's the situation. What do you all think we should do? Liu Feng spread his hands and looked at the leaders around him. A brief silence followed. Blood Wolf was the first to break it. Heh, I don't think anyone here can defeat you in terms of strength, so... Agreed. Bao Geng and Z2 both nodded. Everyone's gaze shifted toward Hua An, who had remained silent the entire time. Must we really hand over the little Moonwolf? Even now, Hua An was still unwilling to give up. Liu Feng frowned, displeasure flashing across his face. You still want to keep it? The wolves outside will never let you carry it out of the prairie, and we've already suffered enough because of your mission. What more do you want? The fact that we haven't thrown you outside to feed them is the limit of our patience. His rapid words revealed the anger in his heart. Hua An gave an awkward smile and rubbed his hands uneasily. So, Lord Hua An, give us an answer. Blood Wolf said lazily from the side. Hua An's old face twisted bitterly. After a long moment, he finally nodded reluctantly. Looks like I have to become a hired thug again. What a tiring fate. Liu Feng's gloomy complaints drew understanding smiles from everyone. So, have you decided? The Moonwolf King leaned lazily against a giant wolf and asked. Liu Feng nodded. I'll be your opponent. The Moon Wolf King glanced toward the camp and said lightly, "It seems the trash inside isn't worth me fighting." Then she tilted her head slightly and looked at Liu Feng with curiosity. "For some reason, I sense a very dangerous aura from you. Can you explain that?" Liu Feng's heart skipped a beat. She must be sensing little gold inside his body. He hadn't expected her instincts to be so sharp. Though shocked internally, he showed nothing on his face. Scratching his head in confusion, he replied, "What are you talking about? Dangerous aura? I don't know anything about that." The Moon Wolf King frowned slightly. Seeing his natural expression, she began doubting her own senses. With a wave of her hand, the surrounding wolves quickly retreated. However, they still loosely surrounded the camp. Stretching lazily, her graceful and alluring figure was perfectly displayed before Liu Feng. "It's been many years since I fought a human. I'm actually looking forward to it. Don't disappoint me." She winked playfully at Liu Feng. Her perfect curves and seductive gaze struck Liu Feng's vision like a hammer. He took a deep breath and began silently chanting in his heart. "Heart like clear ice, heaven cannot disturb. Heart like clear ice, heaven cannot disturb." Damn it, this woman is too good at seducing people, even Fei Yi cannot match. After a long moment, he finally expelled the distracting thoughts and returned to his battle-ready state. With some helplessness, he said, "Miss Moon Wolf King, if you want to fight, then fight. Do you really have to test my self-control like this?" The Moon Wolf King laughed softly. "You're quite interesting, but I'm going to attack now." Before her words finished, her right foot tapped the ground and her body transformed into a blur rushing toward Liu Feng. Feeling the pressure brought by that graceful body, Liu Feng dared not be careful. A ruler who had dominated the Beastman Prairie for so many years could not possibly be weak. His left foot shifted slightly. He dodged lightly. Her delicate white fist tore through the air, brushing past his clothes. The powerful pressure from the strike made his skin sting. Liu Feng curled his lips slightly. His fingers moved lightly across the spatial ring. A heavy sword appeared in his hand. A sword was the soul of a swordsman. The moment the heavy sword entered his hand, Liu Feng's entire aura surged dramatically. Holding the sword with his right hand, he swung it fiercely at the beauty before him. Seeing this, the Moon Wolf King scolded lightly. "Oh, what an ungentlemanly man!" Though she said so, her movements were no softer. Her shoulders trembled slightly. The wolf fur cloak draped over her suddenly stood upright like countless needles, wrapping tightly around the heavy sword. Liu Feng frowned. He hadn't expected the decorative fur to become a weapon. He twisted the sword violently, attempting to cut through it. Cha-ching! Sparks flew. The wolf fur remained completely unharmed. "Haha, that's not ordinary wolf fur. Your broken sword won't cut it." Her delicate foot suddenly drew a strange arc in the air and kicked toward Liu Feng's neck. "Oh, is that so?" Liu Feng smiled. His right leg blocked the kick. At the same time, his inner chi surged through his body and poured into the sword. Sword energy burst forth. Sensing the chilling sword aura suddenly erupting from the previously ordinary iron sword, the Moon Wolf King was startled. Her shoulders trembled as she tried to retract the wolf fur cloak, but Liu Feng would never allow it. The sword energy exploded with a fierce slash. Rip! The moon-white cloak split cleanly in half before the Moon Wolf King's shocked eyes. Liu Feng grabbed half of it and laughed lightly. The Moon Wolf King flushed with anger. Her beautiful face reddened slightly. White light flickered in her hands. Moments later, two delicate daggers appeared, spinning playfully between her fingers. "Huh, let's see if you can cut my moon fangs this time." Liu Feng chuckled. "Those aren't your teeth, are they?" The teasing words floated lightly through the air. The Moon Wolf King's face changed instantly. "You bastard! My teeth could kill you just the same." Her daggers shot forward like lightning. Liu Feng smiled. His heavy sword moved continuously around his body, blocking, slashing, cutting, deflecting, keeping the snake-like daggers outside his defense. Two figures flashed across the prairie. Their bodies could barely be seen, only the constant clang of metal echoed through the night. Inside the camp, everyone stared in shock at the occasionally appearing figures. Bloodwolf sighed bitterly. "I never expected this kid to be this strong. When he fought us, he must have hidden a lot of his strength." Baogang and Z2 nodded gloomily. The gap between star rank and 8th rank truly could not be overcome with numbers alone. Liu Feng raised his sword and blocked a dagger aimed at his eyes. Just as he prepared to counterattack, his heart suddenly tightened. The Moon Wolf King moved like lightning and threw herself into Liu Feng's arms. Breathing softly beside his ear, she laughed. "You revealed an opening, little one." Her slender elbow slammed fiercely into Liu Feng's chest. Liu Feng groaned. He forcefully swallowed the mouthful of blood that had reached his throat. Though the Moon Wolf King had landed the strike, her chest was briefly exposed. Liu Feng's left hand shot out instinctively. It pressed directly against the soft fullness before him. The Moon Wolf King's face flushed red. She leapt back and shouted angrily, "Pervert!" Liu Feng wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and grinned. Likewise. Liu Feng shrugged indifferently. At the edge of life and death, who still cared whether one was called a rogue or not? Though that feeling just now was actually quite nice. The soft sensation from earlier resurfaced faintly in his palm. The thought flashed through his mind, but none of it showed on his face. Otherwise, he could not guarantee that the she-wolf before him wouldn't fly into a rage and order the wolf pack behind her to slaughter the entire camp. Inside the camp, the sound of people swallowing their saliva echoed everywhere. What good fortune! That was the collective thought of everyone present. If Liu Feng could hear it, he might very well cough up blood on the spot. The Moon Wolf King's face was still slightly flushed, her beauty dazzling beyond compare. Her pair of soul-stealing eyes stared straight at Liu Feng. Liu Feng's gaze wandered everywhere except toward her. He simply did not dare look directly at her, because he feared that once he did, he might not be able to look away. And the woman before him, no matter how beautiful, was still a wolf in essence, a ferocious wolf. Who knew what she might suddenly do? The Moon Wolf King frowned slightly and complained with a pout. "Why don't you dare look at me? Am I that ugly?" Her voice sounded like a lover's coquettish complaint, soft and intoxicating, capable of melting into one's bones. Though if the cold gleam in her beautiful eyes were a little less obvious, the effect would have been even perfect. Liu Feng's heart jumped violently. He immediately turned his gaze toward the ground. A tiny pair of white feet entered his vision, tiny toenails arranged neatly, looking strangely adorable. How the hell am I supposed to fight like this? Not even knowing where to put his eyes, Liu Feng could only look up at the sky and sigh in frustration. The Moon Wolf King gently stroked the torn moon-white wolf fur cloak Liu Feng had cut earlier. Her lips pouted slightly, but the cold gleam in her eyes grew more intense. Howling Moon Frenzy! Suddenly, the Moon Wolf King leapt backward more than 100 meters. She raised her head toward the silver full moon and released a piercing howl. As her howl echoed out, the surrounding wolves immediately responded with their own howls. The sound was earth-shaking. As more and more wolves joined in, the howl spread across the entire prairie. Countless powerful beings were startled. Liu Feng frowned and stared at the stunning woman in the distance. He could clearly feel that the Moon Wolf King's aura was climbing rapidly, approaching that legendary realm. Feeling her violent aura rising, Liu Feng's fighting spirit surged wildly. His eyes burned as he watched that graceful figure. I really want to see how powerful my attack will be if I activate Gale Step and unleashed 8 consecutive strikes. High in the sky, the full moon suddenly released a beam of silver light. The light descended and completely enveloped the Moon Wolf King. A terrifying pressure radiated faintly from within the light. Then it shot straight into the heavens. The enormous pillar of silver light was visible across thousands of meters. Countless experts were shaken. Questions and speculations spread across the prairie. Isn't that the Moon Wolf King's howling moon frenzy? I wonder what kind of expert forced her to use that move. That gam woman finally met her match. Hopefully she never comes back. Various exclamations, goodwill, and malicious thoughts echoed across the plains. Liu Feng's heart trembled slightly. Silver-white true ki burst from his body and surrounded him faintly. His eyes remained locked on the pillar of silver light. Inside the camp, countless gazes were fixed on it as well. After a long while, the silver light finally began to fade. Inside it, the graceful figure slowly became visible. Finally, the light disappeared completely. Her appearance had not changed at all. She was still that perfect combination of wildness and arrogance. Only now, her once waist-length silver hair had grown all the way to the ground, and the wolf fur cloak Liu Feng had cut earlier had already been restored. Liu Feng, you actually forced me to this point. Can you tell me your name? The Moon Wolf King stepped lightly on the air and rose into the sky. Her eyes curved slightly as she spoke in a soft voice. Feeling the immense pressure radiating from her body in midair, Liu Feng nodded solemnly. Liu Feng. Liu Feng. The Moon Wolf King laughed softly. I am very curious. Who is your master, to be able to teach such a powerful discipline? Liu Feng tilted his head slightly, blinked, and smiled. My master said I was too stupid and too slow to learn. When he drove me out, he warned me never to reveal his name. He said I would only disgrace his reputation. So I can't say. Of course, Liu Feng did not claim he was self-taught. No one would believe that. It was far better to invent some mysterious master. That way, others would not dare underestimate him. After all, if the discipline was this strong, how terrifying must the master be? Anyone would naturally think this way. If you beat the discipline, would the master appear later? As for the lie being exposed, the world was vast. Who could say that there weren't some eccentric hidden expert somewhere? Hearing such obvious nonsense, the Moonwolf King felt anger rise. Yet she truly did not dare kill Liu Feng. At the most, she would teach him a lesson. Her fingers brushed lightly across a strand of silver hair and she smiled. Liu Feng, we haven't finished our fight yet. Do you still dare continue? If you don't, then return the little Moonwolf. Liu Feng's eyes lit up. He laughed. Why wouldn't I? No matter what you do, I'll accompany you. The Moonwolf King smiled. Her white hand clapped lightly in approval. How bold. I'm quite fond of you. Don't disappoint me. Liu Feng smiled bitterly inward. That kind of affection I really can't afford. He raised his heavy sword, the tip pointed straight toward the Moonwolf King floating in the sky. Moonwolf King, please. Yeah, how polite. She smiled gently. Suddenly, her body flashed. A stunning afterimage remained in the air. Liu Feng's eyelids lifted slightly. Infusing true ki into his heavy sword, he slashed fiercely behind him. From the empty air behind him, a strand of silver hair shot forward and struck the sword. Clang, clang! Metallic sounds rang out. Ambush attacks really are a woman's favorite trick, Liu Feng said as the beautiful figure appeared before him. The Moonwolf King nodded cheerfully. The more beautiful the woman, the more she enjoys ambushes. Little one, remember that. Big sister just gave you a lesson. Liu Feng chuckled softly. Sword energy flashed along the heavy blade as he swung it toward her. You sly little boy, the Moonwolf King laughed. Her delicate foot stepped lightly on the air. She retreated several meters, effortlessly dodging the sweeping sword energy. Her graceful body hovered in midair. Her long silver hair fluttered in the wind. Combined with her breathtaking beauty, she looked like an angel descending from the heavens. The mercenary guild in the fortress city Sun Never Sets was clearly far more luxurious and massive than the one in Adventure Town. If the mercenary guild in Adventure Town could be compared to a small inn, then the one here was like a luxurious star-rated hotel. Above the main gate, the huge magical words Mercenary Guild shone brightly, faintly flickering. After entering the gate, there was none of the stuffy, noisy atmosphere that existed in the Mercenary Guild of Adventure Town. Inside the hall, everything looked magnificent and splendid. No matter how you looked at it, it didn't seem like a place where mercenaries, who were said to be the roughest of people, would stay. Large groups of mercenaries were in the hall, some sitting and some standing. Although there were many people, everyone consciously kept their voices low. When they saw Ken's and his group entering, they merely glanced at them before turning their attention away. A cool breeze circled gently indoors, giving the tired mercenaries the most comfortable enjoyment. How is it? Better than the Mercenary Guild in Adventure Town, right? Ken said with a soft laugh. Yes, it's pretty good, Liu Feng praised. Ken quickly walked to the counter and said with a smile to the task clerk beside it, Hey, Nayu, help me pick up a mission, D rank. The middle-aged man behind the counter, Nayu, lifted his head and nodded, casually asking, What's wrong, Kens? Didn't finish that B rank mission? Kens shrugged. You know B rank missions aren't that easy. Besides, I've got a troublemaking dwarf here. Haha, Nayu laughed. How could I forget the mission terminator in your team? Hearing this from behind, Liu Feng couldn't help but laugh and said quietly, Badasi, I didn't expect you to have such a famous nickname. Badasi scratched his head awkwardly. Well, Liu Feng, you know dwarves love drinking. I'm no exception. But once I drink, I get confused. So you don't only get confused when you drink. The elf Heya rolled her eyes and said suspiciously. Since Badasi had made a mistake today, he didn't dare argue with his teammates. He scratched his head and smiled without saying anything more. After handing in the mission, Kens turned around and smiled at Liu Feng. Xiao Feng, what do you plan to do? Liu Feng frowned slightly and thought for a moment. Right now, he really wanted to go and tell Sophie that he was safe, but Sun Never Sets was too far from Adventure Town. Even riding a griffin would take more than a week, and griffins were only raised by powerful forces. Ordinary people simply didn't have them. So he could only sigh inwardly. I hope Fair doesn't worry too much. When I have time, I'll go see you. Looking up and seeing everyone's eyes on him, he shook his head. I don't know. Then why don't you join our mercenary group? When you want to leave, just let us know, Ken said eagerly, rubbing his hands. Liu Feng lowered his head and thought for a while. He didn't have anything important to do at the moment anyway. Following them and trying the life of a mercenary might not be bad. He could also experience the thrill of adventure. So he nodded and accepted Ken's invitation. Seeing Liu Feng nod, Ken's and the other 3 members all breathed a sigh of relief. With such a master in their team, missions would become much easier and much safer. Good. Xiaofeng, give me your mercenary badge and I'll register you, Ken said happily. Liu Feng flipped his hand and took out the mercenary badge that Sophie had helped him obtain. The silver badge glowed faintly in his palm. A silver badge? Ken exclaimed in surprise. What's wrong? Liu Feng asked in confusion. That badge can only be attained by a B-rank mercenary. How did you get it? Ken said, turning the badge over repeatedly in his hand. I applied for it, of course. All right, go do it, Liu Feng replied casually. Okay. Ken's took the badge and went back to talk to Nayu. Nayu looked at Liu Feng in surprise from afar and then nodded. After a while, Ken's returned with a satisfied smile. All right, it's done. Xiaofeng, take this. From now on, you're a member of our blazing mercenary group, Ken said with a cheerful laugh as he handed back the badge. Liu Feng nodded lightly. Let's go eat first. We haven't had a satisfying meal since we were on the prairie. Ken's waved his hand and walked out first. The fortress city Sun Never Sets truly deserved its reputation as one of the largest cities among human kingdoms. Shops lined the streets, selling all kinds of strange and rare goods. Pedestrians frequently stopped to look at them. Along the way, Ken's enthusiastically introduced everything to Liu Feng, talking nonstop. The 3 people behind them were extremely dissatisfied. Why were they all human, yet the treatment was so different? Finally, they stopped in front of a unique restaurant. This place is good. It's a restaurant specifically for mercenaries. The conditions are great, and most importantly, it has that lively atmosphere, Ken said with a big grin. So, do you like it, Xiaofeng? It's all right, Liu Feng shrugged casually. He didn't care much about food, so long as it was edible. When they stepped into the hall, a noisy and fiery atmosphere rushed towards them. Sure enough, it's lively, Liu Feng thought silently as he looked at the mercenaries sitting all over the hall with bare arms. Ken's led the way to an empty table in the corner. After Ken's called out, a neat and pretty waitress quickly brought the dishes he'd ordered. Come, Xiaofeng, let's drink to celebrate you joining us, Ken's laughed as he raised his wine cup. The dwarf Badaci had already been tempted by the wine on the table. Hearing the captain's words, he immediately lifted a large bowl. Xiaofeng, congratulations on joining our blazing mercenary group. Haha, I'll drink first. Tilting his head back, he gulped down the entire bowl of beer in one go. He slammed the bowl on the table and shouted loudly, "Another one! That felt great!" Liu Feng was astonished. He'd long heard that dwarves loved drinking passionately, but he'd never seen it himself before. Today, he had truly opened his eyes. Brother Feng, don't mind that drunkard. Once he sees alcohol, he loses his mind, the mage Beifas said warmly, trying to bring their relationship closer. Liu Feng had a good impression of them, so he didn't mind and nodded with a smile. Seeing that Liu Feng didn't object to the title Brother Feng, Beifa became even happier and more enthusiastic. With good wine helping the atmosphere, the 5 of them quickly grew closer over the meal. Just as they were enjoying themselves, a very harsh laugh came from nearby. "Oh, isn't this Captain Ken's? What, you didn't die on the Orc Prairie? I mourned for you for quite a long time." Liu Feng frowned and turned to look at the person who said that. At a nearby table, a dozen or so people were staring at them with extreme disdain. The leader wore a fighter's outfit, and 2 moons proudly shone on his chest. A 6th-rank fighter. They're members of the Mad Fantasy Mercenary Group. We have some grindages with them, but they're powerful and we usually can't afford to provoke them, the dwarf muttered quietly. The captain never lets us teach them a lesson. He always wants to settle things peacefully, but people like them, only fists can make them shut that filthy mouth, the elf Heya said angrily. What's going on? Liu Feng asked, puzzled, glancing at Ken's. In his opinion, Ken's didn't seem like someone who feared trouble. Ken's had his head in hands and sighed heavily. It's because of these 3 kids. I don't mind myself, but I'm afraid of dragging them into trouble. Beifa's face turned red and he shouted loudly, "Captain, you don't have to worry about us. At worst, we die." Ken's, the elf is right. With people like them, tolerance doesn't work. You have to make them fear you before they'll shut that filthy mouth. Liu Feng patted Ken's shoulder. Then he tilted his head towards the 3 hot-blooded youths and smiled. Do you want to beat them? The 3 nodded heavily. Yes. Good. Then start by cursing them. If it turns into a fight, I'll help you. The 3 of them exchanged glances, and each could see something called excitement in the other's eyes. Even the usually calm elf Heya couldn't help but let a smile appear at the corner of her mouth. It seemed they had endured bullying from the mad fantasy mercenary group for far more than just a day or two. Now that they had a powerful expert backing them up, how could they not feel excited? Kenz opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but in the end he swallowed his words. Having been a mercenary for many years, he had long grown indifferent to life and death, yet the hot blood in his heart still remained. He slammed the cup in his hand onto the table, his eyes red as he roared angrily, "Beat the hell out of that bastard!" Seeing their captain finally take a stand, the dwarf Badasi could no longer hold back. He shouted toward the group, still insulting them from across the room. "You bastards! You're just a bunch of idiots relying on your captain's reputation to act tough here, a pile of trash." "That's right, a bunch of trash, parasites, scum!" Beifa also shouted excitedly, no longer caring about his identity as a mage. "Human trash," the elf Heya added calmly, still maintaining her elegant demeanor. The members of the mad fantasy mercenary group were stunned by this sudden counterattack of insults, but soon their anger exploded. Cursing loudly, they stood up, rolled up their sleeves, drew their weapons, and looked ready to start a fight. "Oh, what's this, Captain Kenz? Looking for trouble now?" The leading fighter sneered with contempt. "Damn it, Wu Kai. Haven't you tried again and again to cause trouble for our mercenary group? Now here's your chance. Come on," the dwarf Badasi shouted, rolling up his sleeves and glaring fiercely. "Little dwarf, you're only a mere fourth-rank fighter and you dare challenge me? Are you worthy?" The fighter laughed wildly. To support his laughter, the mercenaries behind him burst into loud laughter as well. "Ha, he's not worthy. Then am I worthy?" A light voice suddenly sounded, interrupting the fighter's laughter. The fighter narrowed his eyes and looked at the smiling young man in front of him. In a cold voice, he said, "Kid, you're not from the blazing mercenary group, are you? I advise you not to offend our mad fantasy mercenary group in Sun Never Sets. An hour ago, I wasn't a member of the blazing mercenary group, but before you insulted them, I had already become one. So?" Liu Fang shrugged lightly and smiled. "Kid, don't try to show off, otherwise your life will be very short," the fighter said darkly. "Sorry, but I like meddling in other people's business. No choice, after all, I'm a good person." Liu Fang laughed lightly, tilting his head back to finish the wine in his cup. The fighter's face turned slightly green as he clenched his fists and stepped forward. "If you want to fight, go outside. Don't you know what kind of place this is?" A tired voice suddenly rang out. The aggressive fighter trembled slightly when he heard the voice. Stopping in his tracks, he said viciously, "Kid, if you've got the guts, go outside." Liu Fang tilted his head slightly but didn't look at him. Instead, his gaze fell on an old man beside the counter, an elderly man who looked extremely sleepy. Liu Fang smiled faintly without saying anything, but his actions showed his answer. He brushed past the fighter and walked toward the exit. "Let's go. My time is precious. I don't have much free time to play with you." Behind him, Wu Kai's eyelids twitched violently. How many years had it been? How many years since he had suffered such humiliation? "I will break every bone in your body, one by one." The malicious voice made Liu Fang pause for a moment. Just when everyone thought he was afraid, a light laugh sounded. "Good thing you said that, otherwise I would have been troubled about whether to kill you later." Kenz and the others chuckled darkly, each throwing Wu Kai a sympathetic look. Poor Wu Kai. So that was the fighter's name. As Liu Fang passed the counter, he softly muttered, "A 7th-rank earth swordsmith. The mercenary guild really does have impressive strength." The old man, lying lazily on the counter, suddenly trembled and finally opened his cloudy eyes. In a hoarse voice, he said, "Hey, I didn't expect that even I could misjudge someone. I'm getting old." Hearing this, Liu Fang couldn't help but raise the corner of his mouth slightly as he pushed the door open and walked outside. Wu Kai's face was gloomy as he put on a pair of refined steel gauntlets and snarled, "Kid, take out your weapon, otherwise people will say I bullied you." Liu Fang curled his lips and secretly thought with amusement, "Good, I'll use you to test the double effect of critical strike." Turning his head, he smiled at Kenz. "Captain, lend me your greatsword for a moment." "Sure, take it," Kenz laughed boldly and tossed the huge sword toward him. Liu Fang caught it with his right hand and weighed it slightly. This should count as a heavy slashing weapon, he thought. He casually swung it a few times and said, "All right, you can attack now." People were constantly passing along the street. Seeing that a duel was about to happen, a crowd quickly gathered around them. Apparently, Wu Kai was quite well known in Sun Never Sets, because as soon as someone recognized him, surprised cries rang out. "Isn't that Wu Kai, the vice captain of the Mad Fantasy Mercenary Group? He's going to duel someone? He's a 6th-rank fighter!" Hearing the shocked murmurs around him, Wu Kai's face showed a proud smile and provocatively lifted his chin toward Liu Fang. Liu Fang responded with a calm smile. Seeing that hateful smile again on the young man's face, Wu Kai's mouth twitched. Finally unable to suppress the anger in his heart, he attacked. The sharp steel claws in his gauntlets gleamed coldly under the sunlight. His left foot suddenly pushed off the ground, shattering the stone pavement. His left fist cut through the air as it shot toward Liu Fang's head. Liu Fang didn't even raise his eyelids. The massive flat side of the greatsword in his hand swung out like someone swatting a mosquito, smashing toward the incoming fist. Wu Kai sneered coldly. Both hands grabbed the greatsword without hesitation, intending to wrench it away from him. Suddenly, the sword in his hands twisted violently, producing sparks of metal grinding against the gauntlets. Wu Kai's hands trembled violently. He hurriedly released the sword, his arms shaking uncontrollably. "Too weak," Liu Fang said coldly, lifting his head with extreme contempt. Wu Kai's face flushed red with anger. He gritted his teeth and secretly pressed a tiny mechanism hidden inside his gauntlet. From the tip of the gauntlet, a very thin black needle shot out. The needle was extremely tiny and the same color as the gauntlet, so no one else noticed it. But Liu Fang's eagle eyes saw it clearly. A trace of disdain appeared on his lips, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He laughed softly. "My turn to attack." As soon as the words fell, his figure flashed and disappeared. Wu Kai's pupils shrank sharply in shock. What kind of speed is that? His body rapidly retreated. "Where are you thinking you're retreating to?" A light laugh sounded beside his ear. Wu Kai was terrified. He threw both fists backward with all his strength. Bam! A loud clash of metal was heard, followed by the sound of bones shattering. A figure suddenly flew through the air, smashing through more than a dozen shop stalls, before dragging across the hard stone road for dozens of meters, leaving a long black scar. "Too fragile," a laughing voice sounded. Everyone looked toward the sound and saw a smiling young man casually swinging a greatsword, his face filled with disdain. If the young man was unharmed, then the person who had been sent flying away must be Wu Kai, the 6th-rank fighter. Realizing this, the entire crowd fell into a stunned silence. Who the heck was this guy? He had swatted a 6th-rank fighter like a mosquito. Just how much strength would that require? In fact, Liu Fang himself was a little surprised. Just now, he had originally intended to slash straight down, but considering the strength he possessed, if he had truly cut down with that force, Wu Kai would probably have been split into 2 halves rather than merely having both arms broken. But to avoid unnecessary trouble, Liu Fang had not wanted his life. He had only taken away the thing that allowed him to continue living as he had before. Perhaps in some situations, this was even more painful than death. From now on, becoming a fighter who could no longer use both arms was undoubtedly a great torment. There was no mercy in a duel like this. Liu Fang understood very well that if Wu Kai had the chance, he would definitely cripple Liu Fang without hesitation. Therefore, Liu Fang felt no guilt at all. He looked coldly at Wu Kai rolling on the ground and screaming in pain. Then he turned his head and smiled at the remaining members of the Mad Fantasy mercenary group who stood there in shock. "So, aren't you planning to help him?" When Liu Fang's cold gaze swept over them, the group involuntarily shivered. One of them stammered, "Kid, our captain will come and settle accounts with you." Hearing this, Liu Fang raised an eyebrow and slowly tilted the greatsword in his hand. When the man saw this movement, he was so frightened that he stumbled back several steps until his companions grabbed him. Watching the Mad Fantasy mercenaries flee in panic, Liu Fang smiled with disdain. "Hey, Xiao Fang, you're really fierce," the dwarf Ba Gazi shouted first with his loud voice. The smiling dwarf ran to Liu Fang's side and jumped up and down as if wanting to pat this hero on the shoulder, but after jumping several times and still not reaching, he scratched his head gloomily. Hey, Xiao Fang, are you all right?" Kenz also walked over with a smile and asked with concern. The bright smile on his face clearly showed how happy he was. The mage Beifa also had a flushed face, extremely excited. As for Heya, she simply gave Liu Fang a thumbs up. Hey, not bad. Let's go too," Liu Fang said with a smile, looking at the large crowd gathered around them. All right, their goal had already been achieved, and everyone was very satisfied. The following days were very peaceful. For some reason, the Mad Fantasy mercenary group did not come to seek revenge. Everything seemed just the same as usual. Liu Fang had now accompanied Kenz and the others on several missions, and he gradually became more and more interested in the life of a mercenary. "Hey, Xiao Fang, today we received a C-rank mission. Pretty good. If I hadn't been quick, it wouldn't have been our turn," the dwarf shouted loudly before reaching the door. "Oh, a C-rank mission? That's really good, Liu Fang said in surprise. He didn't expect them to actually get a C-rank mission. C-rank missions appeared in the Mercenary Guild roughly once a month. There were always far more mercenaries than missions, so competition was intense. He didn't expect Badasi to actually grab one. Hearing the dwarf's loud shout, Heya, who was practicing archery in the open yard, also turned around and nodded in satisfaction. I didn't expect you to actually be useful for once. The excited dwarf immediately exploded with anger upon hearing this. Heya, how many times have I told you, just because you shoot arrows a little more accurately doesn't make you so amazing. If you've got the guts, try swinging my warhammer. Looking at the chattering dwarf, Liu Fan rolled his eyes helplessly. Badasi, the captain said that if you keep arguing, you won't be allowed to drink anymore. The complaining voice suddenly stopped. The dwarf scratched his head gloomily and pouted. If I don't talk, then fine, but is it necessary to cut off my alcohol? He handed over a piece of parchment. Here, Xiaofeng, this is the C-rank mission. Take a look, it's really good. Liu Fang automatically ignored the earlier complaints and took the parchment and examined it carefully. C-rank mission. Escort the Buddha Lawn merchant caravan safely to Peacetown. Reward, 10,000 gold. After reading the contents, Liu Fang lowered his head and began thinking. Something wasn't right. From Sun Never Set to Peacetown was only a one-day journey. Along the way, they only needed to pass through a short stretch of the Great Plain. There wasn't much danger there. At most, this should have been a D-rank mission or even E. How could it possibly be raised to C rank? And the reward seemed a little too high. This mission seems a bit suspicious, Liu Fang said thoughtfully. Oh, what problem? Heya asked curiously as she walked over after putting away her bow. Look, this should originally be a D-rank mission at most, but it's listed as C rank and the reward is quite high, Liu Fang said, handing the parchment to her. Looking at it this way, there does seem to be something strange. I think we should wait until the captain and Bei Fa come back and discuss it together, Heya said after studying it for a while. All right, let's do that, Liu Fang nodded lightly. Then he smiled and added, hopefully nothing big is wrong, or else Badasi's good intentions would be wasted. Haha, Heya chuckled softly. Seeing them both laughing happily, the dwarf Badasi rolled his eyes fiercely. Idiots. A soft childish voice suddenly sounded from Liu Fang's chest. Idiots. Hearing the voice, the dwarf became even more depressed. He grabbed his head angrily and shouted, Lazy snake, if you keep talking, I'll cook you, even though I've never eaten a long-legged snake before. The little golden snake slowly poked its head out of Liu Fang's clothes and looked at the dwarf with a very human-like eye roll, then calmly repeated, Idiot. The dwarf, completely defeated by these two and the snake, held his head and ran away while shouting, I'll go find the captain and bring him back to discuss this, a bunch of idiots. Watching the dwarf disappear around the corner, Liu Fang couldn't help but smile. Hey, being with them is quite enjoyable. They are my friends. Little Jin slowly slid out of Liu Fang's chest and flew to his shoulder, lazily lying there while basking in the faint sunlight. Heya felt extremely possessed about Liu Fang's pet. It clearly had no wings, yet it could fly. Normally, only 9th-rank magical beasts could speak human language. But no matter how she looked at it, it didn't resemble a powerful 9th-rank magical beast at all. Every day it just stayed lazily in its master's arms, only occasionally coming out to wander around. It was extremely picky for food, only eating the barbecue meat that Liu Fang personally roasted. No matter how delicious other foods were, it ignored them completely. So everyone gave it a nickname, the strange, lazy snake. None of them could possibly imagine that this little creature was actually the 4th supreme being among the human nations, and no one would dare to think so either.